Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for my client Carter's vlog. And overall, good training week here. As you guys know, though, of course, we've dealt with, just due to, again, professional stuff, his life, everything else, and also because he's a middle-aged lifter with a physically demanding job. We do deal always with some hip and low back issues that we were working through, but we have them in a pretty decent place at the moment. And I know that just over time, the reverse hypers will continue to help him there. But we started the week off on max effort bench press day with closed grip bench press against, should be, I think, 30 pounds of bands. Looks like the red Rogues in the video clip. And I think he got 275 plus the bands. Again, keeping in mind this is close grip. Now, of course, Carter's got pretty big triceps, which you guys see and note all the time in a lot of these angles. We're also finishing up a cut. So he's trying to drop body weight. Last time he checked in with me, I think he said he was 203, and his goal is 200. And I think he had bulked to around something to 218 up to 220. Just going off memory here. So I've got to try to remember this stuff for each client without the notes in front of me. But we do, after that, I'm having him do a little bit of close grip benching. Then he does lat pull downs, plate front raises, and then lots of tricep work with bands. And some people would say, so why the band stuff at all if his triceps are so big? Because he does get a lot of elbow pain and his tendons in general, like in his forearm and his elbows, things like that. So we do always have to be aware of that. Now, obviously, his upper body is more developed than his lower due to, a lot of inflammation and minor injury history. But as I've said, we're working through that. But it doesn't mean we don't train these things, particularly stuff like the work for the elbows and everything. And something that we have to think about there too is that even pull-ups and stuff aggravate that. So that's why we're doing lat pull-downs at the moment. And it's another benefit he has to having such an elaborate home gym. He can work around those things. We have so many different bars, bands, chains. We can find the stuff that can work around all of that. We work around all those things. So he did a cambered bar squat this week for max effort work. So he's trying to learn to use those handles he has, and he doesn't have the big cambered bar like I do. And you guys see a few of my clients here or there have, and it's because, again, some space limitations. Those things are so big and bulky. So he's got to make space for it, in his home. All right, he's got to make space for it. So he's been doing that, and I think he said later in the week when we see the good mornings, of course, you'll see him doing them with the axle bar, with that put on there, which is much easier. It feels a lot more like the big cambered bar itself. And that's really, I think, the best way to do it because he was experimenting with the different bars he had. So I think that's what he's going to do. Then, of course, we follow up with more upper back work. So I have him do one arm dumbbell rows. Then he does his belt squats. So the thing is, it's interesting with him is that wider stance stuff like this doesn't inflame his hip. All right, whereas for me, it does. So again, as we point out in these things, hip structure is such a fascinating thing. And that's the problem we run into a lot of times with finding things like optimal squat stance. Muscularly speaking, usually a wider stance is going to be preferable for building overall size. Narrower stance, slightly more quad focus, only because it allows for many people a deeper knee angle. That's the only reason. Keep that in mind. There's no benefit to a narrower stance if your degrees of knee flexion are not any different, if you don't get deeper. But again, it really varies so much in terms of the physical structures of a lifter skeleton, as far as finding those best angles. Then, of course, he does glute ham raises, reverse hypers. And that's usually kind of our go-tos for him. We have the benefit of having all these devices. Again, big perk of having a very, very well set up home gym like this. He's got everything squeezed in, makes efficient use of the space, but he's got really a phenomenal equipment set. And we can't stress that enough. He gets a lot of compliments in these vlogs. I've got a big home gym, whereas he's got a really efficient home gym. That he's made extremely good use of his space and is well organized. So, you have to respect that. All right, then we do speed benching. Speed benching against bands. He'd been using chains, and now we've worked into bands for a bit. So we usually do 3 sets of wide, medium, close on that. Didn't need all that today. We have plenty of footage. So, just doing 1 set of each speed work on here. And I'm having him do seated presses. Now, people would say, why? We need a little more delt. I feel like his delts, upper back, stuff like that, need the most work at the moment. They need the most work in terms of his bench strength. So I want to really, really work on those shoulders. So we're seeing plate raises, we're seeing some overhead work. But notice they're all smaller movements. We're not trying to beat him up with a bunch of standing barbell presses right now. And so again, really depends on the lifter as far as what we do there. But we're trying to minimize his extra axial loading, right? Because he gets so much of it day to day. And then, of course, we finish up with tricep work. Dynamic lower box squats with a safety bar against bands, right? Bands this week. And of course, the same thing again, we're doing straight weight for the speed pulls, and it has to do with the fact of stability, his hip, everything else. And as he and I hope is over time, these things will correct as we continue to build certain elements up in his hips and his low back over time, over the months and months and months, so that eventually we can do bands and all these things on the speed work. We can run different types of pulling. We can put certain amounts of more workload, like running double maxes on the lowers. He can't handle all that at the moment. All right, but over time we will be able to. All right, so like the other lower days, the rest of the lower days look pretty similar. We do 1 arm dumbbell rows. Again, wanting to build that upper back, middle back up, his grip strength. We do good mornings. I'm having him do them with his cambered bar. Because again, I want more glute. I want a lot more glute. We could do these with the safety bar for more back, but I think we're at a point where, again, I want to build his glutes and stuff up. And notice what he has to use for weight on this compared to, say, someone like me. You guys are watching me do work sets of 5 with 405. I have a lifter who can do sets of 10 with 405 right now on these, which is crazy. It's freaking crazy. But it's also a guy who can pull mid 600s, right? Mid 600s puller. So, that's what we would expect to see. But as we notice again, the glutes, the low back, everything else, all this stuff have to come up for Carter. And they will. And then we finish up with our normal glute ham raises and reverse hypers afterwards. All right, we finish up with those things. But again, it's just going to take time to put the muscle on where we want it in the low body without re-inflaming all those inflammation problems and overuse problems he has from the past. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.